Here he is from New York. That Kevin McCullough.
Welcome back to Times Square, and a very Merry Christmas and holiday season to you as we are winding our way through December. It is kind of a lull if you think about it in terms of news intensity, in terms of what's going on, but the transition continues. And at the same time, there's some activity at the Supreme Court these days. Here to discuss is May Mailman. She's the director for the Independent Women's Law Center, and she's become a regular here at That Kevin Show. May, it's good to see you again.
Hi, it's great to be back.
You observed the arguments this week that the different sides in the transgender law from Tennessee, the case that's worked its way up to the court, that are being argued. You've written a piece for Fox News that came out on Thursday of this week, I think. What were your takeaways, and how do you think this impacts that all-important subject matter that you guys at the Independent Women's Forum have been on since before almost everybody else?
Yeah, so this is the first, I think, big transgender case after the Bostock opinion, which said that employers couldn't fire people for being transgender. And then since that case, there have just been 1,000 questions percolating of do people have to let men into women's sports, men into women's locker rooms? And then this case is specifically, can states protect minors from chemical and surgical castration? So more than 20 states do protect those minors. And the ACLU said, no, you can't do that because that's sex discrimination. Why is it sex discrimination? Because men can have access to testosterone, but women can't. But
no, it's because we live in some sort of weird universe that these people don't think about anything in normal context anymore. But I sorry to interrupt. Go ahead.
Right. So it's a crazy theory because, of course, that's not the case. Nobody can have access to gender transition, or what I call sex trait modification, at all. It has nothing to do with whether you're a woman or a man. It has to do with whether you're a minor living in the state of Tennessee and you can't be castrated. So it seems like the Supreme Court is going to let Tennessee have their law. This is not going to be sex discrimination. We're not going to put a constitutional lens on it. And I think it's not going to be close. I would expect 6-3. But it wasn't all upside. I mean, I do think that clearly Justice Alito understands what's going on here, that this is the mutilation of minors. Clearly, Justice Thomas also understands that men and women are different and that this has nothing to do with sex discrimination. But I think the remainder of the justices, even the ones on the conservative side, do buy in a little bit. For example, Justice Barrett called the female who is identifying as a male, who's arguing for the ACLU, called this person Mr. Well, it's not a Mr. At least just don't say the pronoun. But so there were some things that I didn't love, but I think that ultimately this case is going to come out on the right side.
I find that discouraging because Amy Coney Barrett has a number of daughters, and I just this issue, it just takes on, to me, every day that I see my 9-year-old come in and say, "Dad, thanks for taking me to school this morning, wada, wada, wada." It just seems to take on more and more personal importance in my own mind. And I don't understand how someone on the court might not see that as clearly, especially when family's been clearly something so important to her.
Yeah, I still think that some people are buying into this idea that it's kind to play the pronoun game, or that you can acknowledge that some people, maybe not everybody, but some kids should have access to these types of drugs. And I think that's more what Justice Kavanaugh said. Well, there's arguments on both sides. The medicine is evolving. Shouldn't we just leave it to the states? And the thing is, don't buy into this lie. Don't buy into the lie that castrating anybody is a kind thing. These are kids. We can have, I'm not willing to have the conversation, but other people are willing to have the conversation about what adults can do with their bodies. These are kids. This
yeah, that's where I draw the line. They're off limits completely. You don't even get to go there. Again, whatever adults do, that's a different conversation. But the state having say, and in some instances, usurping parents' rights on some of these issues, that's not going to wash. I don't think the American people will do that. In your piece at Fox News, you were surprised by one justice in particular, and you said rather dramatically, what happened with Justice Gorsuch?
Right. So Justice Gorsuch loves to talk during oral arguments. He loves to press his arguments. He loves to make jokes, loves to have a conversation. And he said not a single word the entire time. And that would be weird normally, but it was especially weird here because that Bostock opinion that I mentioned to you that really inspired much of the transgender litigation, not only in this case, but in a bunch of areas. Like, it is the number one case that's cited when you're talking about men's right to enter women's spaces. That was Justice Gorsuch's opinion. He was the one who said sex discrimination means discrimination on the basis of transgender status, which means treating men as men and women as women. So his opinion really did spark all of this. And so you would have thought that he would have engaged either to defend his opinion, to explain his opinion, to narrow it, to expand it, something, nothing.
Maybe, and I'd like to know your thoughts on this, maybe his body language is telling us that he's not as confident in his previous opinion as he was when he wrote it.
Yeah, it's tough because in Bostock, he said, today's decision doesn't extend beyond this decision. So yes, I'm saying you can't fire somebody for being transgender, but that has nothing to do with bathrooms, nothing to do with sports, nothing to do with medicine, nothing to do with religion. And of course, it has something to do with all of those things.
So he purposefully did not allow his decision to extend into those areas.
Well, he said that, but the dissent said, what are you doing? Of course it applies to all of those things. Of course, if you say sex discrimination is discrimination on the basis of transgender status, of course it affects religion. Of course it affects locker rooms. Of course it does. And so now I think he's stuck because he has both said, my opinion doesn't extend beyond that, and now it so clearly has. And so do you have to admit that your carve out was right? Like, what do you do? And so that's why I was so interested. And I actually just don't know what's going on in anybody's head, but also Justice Gorsuch's head.
Yeah. May, always appreciate it. You are one smart cookie, and we sure are benefiting from your insights. Appreciate you being here.
Thanks for having me.
Kevin McCullough coming right back from New York. Don't go away.
Stick around for more of That Kevin next. That Kevin Show.